So the motion before us today, I just want to clarify for people that are watching that the wording is that given the proposed changes to the taxation of private corporations, as outlined in the Minister of Finance's paper, Tax Planning Using Private Corporation, will have a drastic negative impact on small and medium-sized local business, that the House call on the government to continue until January 31st, 2018, its consultations on these measures. So many of my colleagues earlier today have made the point that they've heard that this proposal will be detrimental to small business and the middle class in Canada, but I want to focus on the substance of the motion and try, hopefully, to convince some of my colleagues to vote for it, because I do think that a reasonable motion to extend the consultation period is something that would cross party lines and many Canadians who are watching this today would find reasonable. So I'll try and go through all the reasons. First of all, the government can't and has not communicated the actual impact of this tax hike on the Canadian economy in real terms. They haven't communicated the impact that this will have on small businesses who either can't take new projects on, new small businesses that won't be created, or employees that will be let go because of these measures. They haven't calculated that or communicated it. They haven't talked about the drain that will come on our social assistance programs when people who have put in place retirement savings under this tax regime right now have to now draw upon social assistance if they can't access their retirement savings thanks to this draconian tax measure. And the minister cannot say how much revenue net it will create and on what assumptions they're basing that revenue. You know, the fact that they haven't been able to communicate how much revenue this would generate for the government is problematic. And we need to consult Canadians to make sure that they buy into a tax hike that the finance minister and the prime minister can't even say how much revenue it will increase. But we also don't know how much tax revenue it will decrease for the government. We know that when in our former Conservative government, we saw the lowest federal tax burden in over 50 years, yet something interesting happened, Madam Speaker. Government revenue went up. And that's because the economy was growing. And what's concerning for me is today, from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, there was another report saying that we've had the 4th straight month of weak growth. This report was done by very senior and lauded economists. And if you look at the federal budget this year, Madam Speaker, what's at the back of that? An increase year over year on deficit spending and debt, and a decrease in projected economic growth. So the fact that the finance minister can't say what this is going to do is a problem. He also can't say how much this is going to cost the government. We don't know how much, again, government revenue will decrease, and we don't know how much this is going to cost to administer. How many more bureaucrats are we going to have to hire to chase small business owners through the CRA on these punitive new tax measures? The government also has not explained why they're raising taxes. They use vague, very discriminative, very terrible, divisive terms like tax cheats and tax on the wealthy to describe hardworking small business owners who form part of the middle class, but they can't tell them why they're taking this money from them. There's no discernible benefit from their deficit to the Canadian economy right now, and it's over $30 billion. And for what? I haven't seen any increases, and certainly in my province, the economy has continued to worsen. So the government not only cannot say how much revenue they're going to bring in from this, they also can't say why they're doing this. Why are they taxing Canadians? Why are they bringing this up? The fact that that hasn't come out begs the question for more consultation. They also can't explain why they broke their promises to small business owners. So not only did they break their promise to not increase the small business tax rate, they're raising taxes on them. So I think that the reason why we need more consultations is that the Prime Minister should be able to explain that broken promise to many small business owners who gave him the benefit of the doubt in the last election. I also think that the government has not explained why they're raising taxes on the middle class instead of getting their spending under control. I'm the official opposition critic for citizenship and immigration. This year alone, the cost of just processing, so not social assistance payments, not any sort of welfare scheme or long-term, just the cost of, or deportation, just the cost of processing people who are illegally crossing the US-Canada land border will be $500 million. $500 million. So if the government can't explain how much revenue they're going to bring in, how much this is going to hurt the Canadian economy, they can't say how this is going to benefit the Canadians that they're taking this from, and they can't explain why they're not getting their spending control. I could list hundreds of other measures that this government has taken where they've just blown the federal budget, and on what? They should be talking about this and explaining their lack of spending controls to Canadians before they go back to them and try and raid their pockets for more money. The government also should extend the consultation period because people are furious. They are furious. And this isn't a partisan issue. This is people who voted Liberal in the last election that had hope for this Prime Minister. And they're saying, nope, I don't think so, because you broke your promise. And now you're not even listening to me. The Prime Minister owes it to these people who gave him the benefit of the doubt to hear out their concerns. I have had over 1,000 Canadians write me or call me in my office. That's on email or phone. I had over 300 people show up to a town hall with virtually no notice. I've had tens of thousands of messages on social media, and a petition that I sponsored, if you go to Madam Speaker, e1239.ca, you'll see that over 43,000 Canadians have signed a petition against these tax measures in about a month's period. That's unheard of. People are furious, and the Prime Minister owes it to them, given his lack of detail on this, to hear them out. Because this is the future of the Canadian economy. A further consultation period will also create an opportunity for the Liberals to correct their divisive, insulting rhetoric around small business owners. That is something that I've heard in virtually every email that has come into my office. Why is the Prime Minister calling me a tax cheat? Do you know how much extra I pay as a small business owner to employ tax lawyers, to prevent auditors from coming in and looking at me? And you're calling me a tax cheat? And now you're going to call me wealthy? Like somehow he has no understanding that people that are of small business owners are actually part of the middle class. An extended consultation period would give the Liberals an opportunity and the Prime Minister to perhaps correct the record on this, in this regard. It would also give us a further opportunity in this House to say what we value as a country. Are we going to punish small business owners and the fact that they take risk and create jobs without the safety net of sick days, vacation time, guaranteed pensions? And are we going to actually say to them, we as a House, we as your representatives actually want to take away that entrepreneurial spirit and tax you and change the rules such that you can't see further growth? That's something that could also be addressed in a further consultation period. Also, it would be an opportunity for the Liberals to clarify this egregious statement made by the small business minister, nonetheless. The longer that we're talking about this, the more people are concerned that they will be impacted, which is really raising a fear and not allowing people to be as productive as possible. The old fear-mongering canard, that's fantastic. They have been taking so much heat on this, Madam Speaker. Every single Liberal member of Parliament I know is getting called by everybody in their riding. And what did their small business minister do? Can you imagine being a Liberal backbencher and watching the small business minister go, oh, if we're consulting, we're fear-mongering? It's kind of crazy. And I would love to have a little bit more time for the small business minister to go out, correct the record on this, clarify what she meant, and perhaps take a little bit more heat from the small business community. This also came out in the dead of summer when farmers were at their busiest. There were floods in Quebec and fires in BC. I think that the Prime Minister owes it to people in these communities to extend the consultation period. It will also allow us to fully examine the regional consequences of this proposal. My province in Alberta has been struggling with the detrimental policies of this government, like changing the rules for downstream regulations on emissions for pipelines when they don't do the same thing for Saudi oil. My province has been struggling with a minimum wage increase, municipal property taxes increases, the government using political decisions to block the build-out of Northern Gateway, working against the Energy East proposal. This small business tax hike is kicking Alberta while it's down, and I would love the Prime Minister to come to my riding and hear from my constituents on how they feel about this. I'll say this in the time that I have. I wish I had time to read all the messages that were sent to me, to my riding, but I'll just say this. To anyone watching at home today, we need you. We need them to amplify their concerns and their voice. You don't have a lot of time on this, Canadians. You need to pick up the phone and call every single Liberal backbench MP and hold them to account for the fact that they're voting against something as simple as extending the consultation period. And this is a government that consults on everything. Get out, call a Liberal MP.
Right on. Good for you.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for
Grasslands.
Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Appreciate that. I just wanted to follow up with a concerned constituent from my own riding and get the members' comments on this. Kyle Selick has owned Double K Meats in Chaplin, Saskatchewan for 8.5 years. In a little town, working very hard. He's called the Liberal tax changes backbreaking, and what he said to us was, margins are tight as it is, and with this new tax coming in, it has me worried about the future of my business. I'd love to hire more people in the near future, so my family time isn't sacrificed even more than it already is. He's asking, why am I getting punished for trying to grow a small business? My question for my colleague is, how have the Liberals so misunderstood small businesses in this country that they think they can move ahead with these changes to punish people like Kyle, who are already working overtime? They've probably got their family into their the meat business, working with them, and they're just trying to make a living.
Our member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Well, to my colleague, Madam Speaker, I would speculate to Kyle's question of why is he being punished, because we have a government that believes fundamentally that the state can run the country better than small business owners and the individuals can. That's the macro level philosophy of this government, and that's why they have increased the deficit to the point where I'm not sure if we're ever, especially under a Liberal government, going to be able to pay it back or get our budget back to balance. They've done that without any discernible metrics or growth. All they've done is increase the size of government as a mean end of itself, and they feel that somebody like Kyle shouldn't have the independence and the ability to run their own future. That's really what this tax is about. It's about stealing the entrepreneurial spirit from Canadians. And this isn't just farmers. This is doctors. This is dry cleaners. This is people with small convenience stores. This is somebody who started a home-based business to stay at home with their kids and was super excited that they were able to hire another employee. The fact is that Kyle was duped, Madam Speaker, because this government claims to stand up for the middle class. Instead, what have they done? All they've done is punish it.
Comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Peace River Westlock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague for an amazing speech there. From the Liberal platform 2 years ago, for Parliament to work best, its members must be free to do what they have been elected to do. Madam Speaker, I think that at this point, at this juncture, I believe 8 Liberal MPs have spoken out against their own government's methods of bringing this forward. I was just wondering if my colleague has any comments to that effect.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I certainly do. Today, for people watching at home, what the public needs to understand is that this motion will be voted on by all members of the House, and the Liberals will likely be what's called whipped by the Prime Minister. And that means that the Prime Minister will say, regardless of what your constituents are saying, even though this isn't a confidence motion and it's only asking for an extension of the consultation period, I am so big-headed in my ego to get this passed that you should go against the views of your constituents, those thousands of calls that you've been getting, and you should vote against this. And I would say to people at home watching, I can promise Liberal MPs that when they vote against this motion, there will be tens of thousands of people that are angry about this, and we will certainly do our best on this side of the House to help those people point that fact out to those MPs.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, it is interesting as a matter of process that normally when a Conservative member speaks, we have members of other parties that want to pose questions to them. But I think it's probably a combination of the intensity and intelligence of the person who just spoke, but also the fact that the government members do not want to talk about this issue, do not want to ask questions about it. So I wonder if the member from Calgary Nose Hill wants to reflect on this, on the fact that government members aren't even willing to stand up and ask questions to her about this issue.
Yeah, honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill has about 30 seconds to respond.
You know, I'd be curious to the table if this was a record. Has a member of the opposition never been asked a question in a speech by a member of the government party before on an opposition day motion. I think this is a first. It's certainly a first for me. But it shows the public the extreme disinterest of the Liberal Party in this. Can you believe that? When I clipped this speech, not a single Liberal MP got up to refute my argument, so I hope that that refutation is reflected in their votes.
Here, here.